Good evening. This is a question in demonstrating God by practitioner in blindness cases. A stubbornness on the part of patients has been assumed. In demonstrating God by practitioner in eye cases where persons wear glasses, what is the explanation? Is the condition requiring glasses nothingness? Well, of course, the condition requiring glasses nothingness. All that remains is to be demonstrated. It's just like cancer or consumption. It's nothingness, but the nothingness remains to be demonstrated. Now, in the case of blindness, what you sometimes come up against is the fact that there is such a convenience in being blind that people do not readily yield themselves to being healed. In other words, they settle into some kind of a joy in being waited on, being catered to, or having everything done for them, or sometimes even being set apart from other people, that often it is difficult to bring them out of it. Of course, with wearing eyeglasses, it's quite different. Nobody takes any pleasure in wearing them, and nobody believes that they're good looking. The difficulty that arises in healing people of wearing glasses is this: that for one reason or another, we do not want to lay them aside until we're healed. We want to continue doing what we're doing, which is a reliance on them. Now, I don't doubt for a minute that everybody in the metaphysical world can leave off wearing glasses if they want to. Just leave them off. Begin doing your work, and if you can't read, you don't have to read. Just live on the truth you already know. And whether it takes a day, a week, a month, or a year, the condition will yield. But then, I ask myself, supposing it does take a month or a year, shall I, for the sake of not wearing glasses, stop this work that I'm doing? Perhaps if you're married and you have a home and family to take care of, you say, can I spare the time to go without glasses and not see what I'm doing, or so forth? Or if you're in business, you say, can I take off a month or 2 or 3 or 4? And the answer always ends up, no, suffer it to be so now, I'll wear them. And that's what makes healing difficult. We really put them on and depend on them, and then try to make ourselves believe that we're not depending on them, that is, in treatment. Whereas actually, I know definitely anybody can be healed. We can be healed of anything. And certainly the wearing of glasses is no trick at all. It's just a matter of taking them off, leaving them off until the healing takes place. And that some of us find difficult. Now, will you please explain what Isaiah meant when he wrote, concerning the work of my hands, command ye me? Well, I just imagine that that's like turning to God and say, well, God, use me, show me what you want me to do. What's my next job? Command ye me, I'll do it. I'm sure there's no more to it than that. Now we have a very serious thing come up here. Do you have daily meditation in which you listen for the presence of God to reveal itself as your children, your husband, or your wife? No. No, you're cheating. You're cheating. When you go into meditation, you go into meditation for only one thing: the realization of God's presence. When you have that realization of God's presence, that presence will take form as husband, wife, companion, secretary, financier, or whatever other form is necessary to your development of that moment. The moment you try to realize the presence of God as husband and wife, aren't you telling God what you want? Now, you have no way of knowing, first of all, whether you should have a husband or wife or children. Secondly, you have no way of knowing, even if you do have, what their manner of husbandhood or wifehood or childrenhood is to be in your experience. Therefore, you never go beyond acquainting yourself with God. Acquaint now thyself with Him and be at peace. Have your meditation for the realization of God, and let God govern. Let God appear as. And then you will find that in the infinite intelligence and the divine love which God is, God appears as everything necessary to your experience, and it appears at the very moment when it becomes necessary. There's no delay. Now, in the same way, on the subject of protection, there is no way of declaring what you wish to be protected from, for there is no evil. And the protective work that we do in our work is the most important part of the entire life of an Infinite Way student. The entire success of their spiritual living depends on the degree and depth of their protective work. Why? Is there something to protect ourselves from? No, there isn't a something to protect ourselves from. There is the universal hypnotism, the universal mesmerism. And perhaps this is as good a time as any to take up this subject, because now it must become clear to you from the very beginning of the Infinite Way, nearly 12 years, I have been trying with all my might and main to make this point clear to our students, and no one knows better than I do how greatly I have failed. It is the one most important part of the Infinite Way. It's the one part in which I've achieved the smallest amount of success. And that is the subject of teaching the nature of error. And the nature of error is the most important part of the work there is. But now it should be easy, because now you have had the whole subject laid bare in the public prints so that you can see how it operates. And this will explain to you why you are human beings instead of children of God, and also how you can become children of God. You have been reading in the prints about subliminal perception. You all know what that is. On the television or in the moving picture theater, they insert a few words, and it's of such short duration that it goes through without your seeing it. So that, for instance, while you are watching a very quiet, peaceful love scene on the screen, inserted right into that is the little statement, go downstairs and buy Coca-Cola. Now, you didn't see that because it went by faster than the eye can see. You didn't hear it because it wasn't spoken. And then a few minutes later, all of a sudden you decided that the love interest wasn't really so great that it couldn't spare you. You'll go down and get a Coca-Cola. And then you come back and take your seat and watch the rest of the performance, not knowing that you didn't want the Coca-Cola. That was projected into you as a projected thought from outside of you without your even being aware of it. Probably if you read the papers the next day, you discovered that this had happened, and you were one of the 57% that went out and bought Coca-Cola because you were told to, even though you didn't hear it. Now just think of this. If they had flashed that sign on so that you could have read it, you might have ignored it, because if you didn't want Coca-Cola, you just shrugged your shoulders and say, I don't want it. But here, you have no defense. It isn't placed to your discretion or your judgment. It's slipped into what they call your subconscious. And then you go out and act on it. That is subliminal perception. Now, they started with popcorn, Coca-Cola. Then they went to directing audiences to get up and go to the telephone. And each week they had tried something different, with the object of finding out how many of you can be told to do what they want you to do and you do it. Because if there's 51% of you who obey, you'll buy the products you're told, you'll go to the church you're told, you'll vote for the party you're told, and you'll have no say in the matter. You'll just get up and act on it. So if there is 51%, the control of the world goes into the hands of a corporation that is owned in Wall Street, and for one purpose only, of making money for whoever will buy its product. Now, as you read in the newspapers or magazine articles, they will tell you, don't fear, we won't use it to make you go to a particular church or vote for a particular party. Well, if you want to trust them, that's your business. But the point that I'm making is this, that there is a something which used to be called mental malpractice, or aggressive mental suggestion. It is a suggestion that is hurled at you without your knowing that it's even in the air. And you merely pick it up and then act on it. Now, this is the secret I have been talking to you about for 12 years that constitutes our humanhood. I have said to you that all error is hypnotism, suggestion that comes out of the blue. It isn't that somebody's doing it. Oh, somebody can, like this group of men are doing it. Somebody can sit over in a corner if they want and malpractice you, and if you don't understand the nature of error and how to handle it, they can succeed in making you very uncomfortable. In fact, in some circles, they cause the death of people. That is done in Pennsylvania by the hexes. It's done, or formerly was done in Hawaii by what is called the bad kahunas. It is still being done in the bush country of Australia by the Aborigines. Any of the primitive races are 500 years ahead of us in mental development, in the knowledge of mental science. We are at least 500 to 1,000 years behind the primitive races. They know the things that Duke University is experimenting with and trying to find out, and that's why Duke University is sending professors out into the country of the primitives to find out what they know so they can bring it to Duke University and teach it as a PhD subject. These people don't get PhDs for what they know out there. But if they'll only teach it to us, we can go to Duke's and get a PhD. Now, what is this secret? The secret is fear. Nobody can malpractice. Now understand this very clearly. Nobody can malpractice except through your fear. If you can be made to fear malpractice, you can be made to suffer from it. In other words, if you fear that there are two powers, and of course not knowing God, you'll have more faith in the evil power than you will in the good. If you had actual God contact, your confidence in God would be so great that even if you did believe in some measure of power and evil, it wouldn't affect you. But the average person has no knowledge of God. They merely have the word God. They merely have prayers to God. They have books about God, but no actual acquaintanceship. So the average person doesn't really know that there is a God. They accept it as a matter of faith. Their parents taught it to them. And if they don't believe it, they have to go to hell sometime. But as for actually knowing that there's a God, very few people have that experience. Therefore, when someone comes along and says, I have evil powers, then you begin to tremble. Now, in the old days of Hawaii, everybody was brought up from childhood to know that there were good kahunas who could heal you and bless you, and there were evil kahunas who could put a curse on you and kill you. In Pennsylvania, among the hexers, it is well known that there are these hexers, and that if you go to them and have them pray your enemy to death, your enemy will be prayed to death, providing, of course, your enemy happens to be one of that same breed that believes in hexers. In the same way, among the Aborigines of Australia, they have a form of destroying by death which is called pointing. They use either a sharp-pointed stick or a finger, and they merely point in the direction of where your enemy is, and your enemy knows you're having that done to him, and he begins to tremble, and within 24 to 48 hours he dies. Now, we are told that in the earliest days of Mrs. Eddy's experience, she discovered that some of her practitioners were not only healing some of their patients, but after they got them well, probably too quickly, they decided to make them sick again so as to bring them back. So they just suggested to them that you're having a relapse. And then they got sick and came back and they got some more treatment. Got well again. And sometimes they found it even possible to suggest that, well, you ought to be more liberal, bring a little more money next time. And so Mrs. Eddy discovered that they were using the power of the human mind both for good and for evil, and therefore you'll find, I believe it's in miscellaneous writings, but if it isn't, it's in one of the lesser writings, this statement that the same mind that can do good can do evil. And that's true on the human plane. So it is that these people with subliminal perception will be able, until they're stopped, they will be able to get a certain amount of people to get out and buy any product they want, go to any church they want, vote for any party they want, until something comes up which will stop them. Now, let's take a step out of the personal now. And let me show you that every medical belief, theological belief that there is in the world, or superstitious belief of any nature, forms part of human consciousness. And right now it's in this room. And so, if a window is open over here, one person who has a little fear of drafts is going to walk out with a cold. And someone over here who fears germs is going to walk out with a germ disease. Why? There is a mass projection of human thought, and those who do not know become victims of it. And they wake up one day and they've got a cold, they've got grip, they got flu, they got polio, they got consumption, and they don't know where it came from. It came from hypnotism, subliminal perception, mental suggestion, actually malpractice. But not a malpractice directed by a person, a universal malpractice which is always going on in the air, and that malpractice is made up of the belief of good and evil. If you could take the belief of good and evil out of the world, you'd have no more malpractice. Now, the very first thing that we have taught in the Infinite Way, because it was a part of my work before that, was that every student should learn the nature of protective work. Not protecting oneself from an evil, protecting oneself from accepting the suggestions of what we call the carnal mind or mortal mind or universal belief. Now, when you accept the spiritual fact that there is only one power, and that power is God, and that the so-called activity of the human mind and its thoughts and its suggestions and its projections are not power, cannot enter to defile or make a lie, you completely cut yourself off from suggestion, hypnotism, or that, and it cannot come nigh your dwelling place. The 91st Psalm tells you, if you dwell in the secret place of the Most High, none of these evils shall come nigh your dwelling place. But if you do not, you're subject to all of them. Now you wonder, why did I get this sickness? Why did I get that sickness? Why did my beautiful mother get this sickness? Why does my innocent child get this sickness? Because there's a belief of good and evil in the world. And because this belief of good and evil is projected in infinite form and variety. You all know as well as I do that every time it comes time to collect for polio, and they fill the radio with it, there are more cases of polio during that week than in all the 10 weeks before. During the cancer week, there's more cancer. That's all the result of suggestion. That's all the result of propaganda. It is the very same thing that is used to get people to go to war. In 1915, we elected a president of the United States, not because he'd been a good president in his first term, he wasn't. And he had no right to be elected to a second term. And so they thought up a slogan, he kept us out of war. And sure enough, he walked right back into the presidency, and then got a propaganda committee going to convince us that we must immediately wipe out the Kaiser or we'd lose democracy and Christianity. And the propaganda bureau went to work, and in 6 months, the same people that elected him because he kept us out of war were shouting, down with the Hun, let's get at the Hun, and let's go to war. In the Second World War, nobody wanted to go to war in this country. And on the Saturday night before election, the candidate for president, who was president, went on the air and said, I give you my word that if I am re-elected, I can keep you out of war. And the next week we were in war. You didn't want to go to war, nobody did. I don't believe anybody in the United States believes now that it was necessary for us to go to war, or that we should have gone to war. But you had no choice. You were propagandized into it. World War I and World War II. And you are propagandized into having corns and bunions and cancer and consumption, not because you want it, and not because it's God's plan for you to have it, but because there is a universal mesmerism. Now I'll go back and read all the Infinite Way books again and see how many times this is brought out, that there is a universal hypnotism, a universal mesmerism, and unless you learn to protect yourself from it, you become a victim of its propaganda.